Hello and welcome to LCBN TV with me, your host, Chris Wickland. Today's show is UK in Focus, looking at our nation through the prophetic lens. A very good morning to you all. Hope you're all well. We're broadcasting across Britain and all Europe on pretty much every platform known to man. So good morning to you. Now, as you know, the news is always filled with lots of really interesting stories, but I thought this week I would just slow the brakes down a little bit because there's so much going on. But actually, as Christians, I think that a lot of Christians are beginning to open their eyes and go, I don't understand this crazy world in which I'm living in. So today's show is really maybe to take a look at what's going on around the world, maybe to take a look at what's going on our streets in Great Britain. What is God doing? What's happening in culture and society? And in the second half of the program, we're going to look at a few things that are going on in the wider world and then bring it all back and hopefully kind of end it with some sense of logic to where things are at. Because I found myself a long time ago waking up to a very alien world. As a Christian, I had this kind of belief system and it felt safe and it felt normal. And then suddenly laws were being passed and legislation was being passed. And I was like, how did this happen? How is it that the whole nation, the whole world went with this? I woke up to not just a post-Christian world, but a completely atheist, secular world. And the way that that secular world thinks was alien to me. And so today we're going to look at some elements of that and how to help you to understand and navigate the world that you're in, but also to be warned not to allow those ideologies into our theology and our Christian experience. Now, as I've said on many occasions, I believe that God is going to do something and is doing something quite outlandish in this nation. And I fear that the church, for the most part, will not want to get involved. I fear that the church will just see what's going on, go, I'm not getting anywhere near that. That's political. That's a mess. I don't want to touch it. But I think that's a bit of a shame. And unfortunately, that is what will happen. The church, for the most part, will want nothing to do with this. But there will be, as there is always, a Gideon's army that's going to go, no, I can see that God is moving here. I'm going to get involved in this, even if it gets me into trouble and costs me my reputation. I say your reputation because you'll just get mud slung at you for even going down this road. So anyway, so what am I talking about? I'm talking about a revolution that's going on our streets across all of Britain. I'm going to show you a little 25-minute documentary that I made of a protest rally that went on in Portsmouth, which is just up the road from me. And this was very interesting amount of Christians that were involved in this and where this is going. And I felt and believe prophetically for quite some time now that a great cultural shift is coming and that this next revival that's going to hit this nation, a revival back to a Judeo-Christian heritage and back to Christianity, is not going to be quite like revivals that we have experienced previously. And I'm now seeing evidence for this. I meet lots of people who are coming to Christ through no means of Christians and no means of the church. They've just come to certain conclusions and given their life to Jesus. And so I'm seeing things now outplay on the streets, which I believe that the church needs to be involved with, because if she doesn't, I do believe one of the dangers of the days ahead is that Christianity will be weaponized and used for a national sectarianism, which is very dangerous. Now, I always say that as a Christian and as a British person, you know, I'm proud of my nation and I'm proud of the Christian history to this nation. And so I am nationalistic, but with a small n. We need to be careful that we don't become Christians with a big capital N, because that's when we can get into sectarianism and that's when danger and trouble can ensue. And one of the things that concerns me is that there aren't really at this moment in time, I mean, there are far right people out there, but what most people are called far right is just really old school liberal conservative. They're just slightly center right. But unfortunately, because of the liberal culture that we live in today, their philosophy is anyone who's slightly right of Stalin is a right wing bigot. And this just isn't true. But my concern is that if the church refuses to get involved in this and what's happening on our streets, that then true far right groups will take Christianity as the religion of the nation, and it's from its history and its heritage, and weaponize it and use it as a form of sectarianism. And this is not going to be good. And this is why the church needs to step up and be involved. But unfortunately, the church won't get involved. And so for the most part, it's going to be down to a Gideon's army. And it will be down to those people that are on the streets, that are getting saved, that are getting born again, that are coming to faith and can see there is a spiritual war that is going on, but it's going on our streets right now. So anyway, enough of me waffling on. Watch this documentary. It's a little fly on the wall documentary of a protest march. It was relatively peaceful, and I give some commentary throughout it. So I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you'll find this insightful. I'll be back after the end of this. See you in a minute. So I thought I'd turn up to my local protest rally, which was going on in Portsmouth. And as you can hear here, the crowds on the left-hand side, which are actually the ones representing the left, the political left, were shouting out Free Palestine. Then we had a cordon of police, which I have to say did a very good job. And then on the right side, to camera here, then we had the people I'd say more centre-right who are protesting for the freedoms of their country. Also, what's interesting is that the left to basically big up Britain. So this is quite interesting. It's not that these guys with the British flags are causing trouble to the left. It's actually the left. Once they find out a protest march is on, they come to it. Now, this is the beginning of the actual event, so there wasn't many people here to start with, but within the next hour or so, it got pretty busy on the right side. So about an hour or so later, Nick Tenconi from UKIP turned up. I've seen him at a few of these rallies, and he's normally a very good speaker. But today he was really on form, using lots of humour to mock the left, but not in an aggressive way, but in a playful way. There is a sense of, there's a strange sense when you're at these rallies that actually the people on the left, you know, sometimes they're pretty chilled, the guys on the right are pretty chilled, and it's just almost like we're doing our thing. And so Nick here is just sort of giving some greetings, and then he's about to go out and do some speeches. You'll notice that there's a lot of crosses at this particular rally because there's a lot of Christians here as well. There's a lot of Christians that are really concerned for their nation and seeing the things that are going on in this nation. And so they're attending these protest rallies because they believe they're standing up for what's left of Judeo-Christian values, which, as I've always said, is the bedrock of Western society. So things are starting to get going now, and this is generally where the left and the right, with their megaphones, start insulting each other or sharing some home truths with each other. But I have to say, this was a very peaceful protest, and both sides, for the most part, and it was actually, believe it or not, it was actually quite a positive experience. I've been to these before, and sometimes you come away thinking, well, that was quite grim. But this particular protest rally was well done. The guys on the left, they all behaved themselves. There was no negative behavior from Antifa that normally stand on the front lines, and on the right, those they behaved themselves as well. I think overall it was a good protest march. So people are turning up now, and it's starting to get busier. The people here on the right, they're just people that are patriotic for their nation. Whereas, surprisingly, the people on the left are anything but. They despise, I'm not being harsh in saying this, but they despise our nation because they've bought the lie of modern day cultural Marxism, which is that the West is bad because it's a colonialist state, I guess, and it's the oppressor of nations, and so they despise their own country, and so they can't stand it when people are waving their English flags here. And obviously we're living in a time where actually you're almost penalized and punished for waving your flag. So I wanted to interview a lady next, and she's from a local church called Living Word Church, which is the church that I oversee and run. And just to ask her, why are you here? Why are you at this protest rally? What is it important for you? And why do you feel like you need to stand up and protect your country? So, Marie, why are you out here today on the streets at this here protest rally?
Because I am absolutely fed up, particularly with the left people, the very hateful, nasty people that call us awful names. And I'm fed up with illegal immigration. Now, I've got friends that are genuine refugees. I have a really good friend who came from Cameroon. She literally came here with the clothes on her back. She's still got 2 bullets in her face from when she was shot by the Muslims. And I'm not against all Muslims at all, but it's the jihadi Islamists that I've really got an issue with. And we've got to stop the boats. We can't afford the people that we've got here in this country already. You know, we are taxed to the hilt, and we cannot be the saviours of the entire world. You know, we can look after maybe the people that are already here, but let's get rid of the 39,000 on the MI5 watch list. You know, why are they on the watch list? Why are we watching them? Why are we paying to watch them? Let's get rid of the 10,000 in prison as well, because why are we looking after foreign prisoners? They could go back home. So
you're saying a minute ago off camera that you kind of feel almost like that you're here for such a time as this, and you almost feel a sense of calling. So as a Christian, why do you think something like this is important at this time?
I just think we've got to stand up for everybody. During World War II, I'm sure there were plenty of Christians that fought for the nation, and we are in a spiritual battle right now. It's good versus evil, and I pray and hope that I'm on the side of good. I feel that I am. I've been a Christian for 20 odd years, and I absolutely love Jesus. And I do feel like I'm here for such a time as this. I really do feel like I'm here for this point in time. So we had a bit of an issue with Antifa at the end of January, and it kind of awoken this sleeping lion that was within me. And I used to have a fake name on Facebook because I was worried about the other people finding out who I was, and also because my husband and I share the gospel with Muslims online. And so just for mine and my family's safety, I had a fake name. Well, I got doxxed, so the far left found out what my real name was and put it out all over Facebook. And the police can't do anything about it, allegedly, because it's not illegal. It's I've got to take them to court privately if I need to. So yeah, it's awoken that sleeping lion. And I don't hate anybody. I love everybody. I even love the people that are abusing me right now, because I believe they're deceived. But it's the spirit in them that I detest.
What do you say to Christians that are basically saying that by being involved in these kind of protest riots, or not riots, so these protests, these public protests, that you're some kind of right-wing bigot? What would you say to that?
I'd say it's absolutely ridiculous. We've got to fight for our country. We've got to fight for the safety of our children, of the women in this country. I mean, where are the feminists when the rape gangs are going on and all of that stuff? You know, World War II, our men went to war. We are at war within our own country because we are importing an ideology that does not play nice with anyone else, even other Muslims. They're killing the Alawites in Syria right now, and they're Muslims. These jihadi Islamists do not like anybody else, and they want to take over, and they are beginning to, the last 20 years or so. I mean, we've got something like 35 Muslim MPs in Parliament. We've just had there's a real Muslim who's just taken over the education, Shabana Mahmood, is it, the Justice Secretary? She's a Muslim, and there are a couple of others in very high places. Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London. We're not in a good place at all. We are at war, and I believe we're at civil war. It's just different from a normal civil war because most of it's online and stuff.
So after an hour or so, Nick Tenconi, the UKIP leader, came out to start rallying the troops to warn us we're about to go on a march through Portsmouth, which was actually a really great march. And the thing I like about Nick, I know that some people say he's quite strong spoken, but he's growing a grassroots revival, so to speak, politically on the ground. He's not coming at it from top down, he's coming at it from bottom up, and he's building a strong support base for UKIP. And he's speaking the language that a lot of people need to hear and want to hear, where they're seeing politicians actually standing up for Judeo-Christian Western values, which is very important for a lot of the people that were here at this meeting. And I guess Nick is also speaking the language of the people as well. You know, the nation of Britain is having some deep divisions and deep concerns. Things like mass immigration, cultural Marxism, and various other things that are going on in our culture. And he's just calling them out, and he's giving a voice to the common man and woman, which is important at this hour.
You have been let down by the Reform Party. I gave them 18 months to show their true colours. When I say their true colours, I mean Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef. What did everyone expect? If it walks like a duck, acts like a duck, and goes quack, it's a Trojan horse for Islam. How do you like those apples? Communist scum off our streets! 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 Communist scum off our streets!
I felt now prophetically for some time that what we're seeing here was going to be coming, where we're seeing not revolt, but we are starting to see revolution taking place on our streets. We're seeing political revolutions taking place right now at grassroots level. Now, probably for the mainstream man and woman, you're not going to be involved in this, but a lot of people are involved in this, and it's growing and growing. And this is what I also see is happening, is that Christianity is being dragged front and center of all this, because Christianity for Britain and for Europe is one of the central where I think Christians are going to miss a trick here. And a lot of Christians are going to go, I don't want anything to do with this. But I think that's actually dangerous, because if the church chooses to be inactive on this particular point, we have to be very careful that people from a real far right side will take Christianity and will use it as a weapon of sectarianism. I think one of the things that I can see is quite useful about these protest marches, actually it diffuses a lot of frustrations, believe it or not, because it's actually giving people a place where they can voice their opinions or voice their frustrations, both sides actually. And so I know some people might look on these protest marches as pointless and of no meaning, but actually I think they're of more worth than not. And also these people, like both sides, they're passionate for their cause. And here these people on the right with the flags and the cross, they're passionate for their country. Now the media has labelled these guys far-right thugs. And nothing could be further from the truth. Most of these people are just what I'd call old school liberal conservative. They're just upset. They're just frightened for the state of their nation. Now that may seem politically incorrect in the hour of today, but when did it become politically incorrect to be proud of your nation? When did it become politically incorrect to wave a British flag? When did it become politically incorrect to have a sense of national pride and be concerned for your own country? And so that's really in part what these marches are about. And I think for a lot of the Christians here, because there is quite a few Christians at this particular march, they're standing up for Judeo-Christian values, which are fast being eroded by the left, unfortunately. I mean, it's just the reality of the political climate in which we're in. So, Daniel, you're here today at this protest march in Portsmouth. What brought you here today?
So I've come to ask people if they're believers, because on the UKIP website it says they want to bring back traditional Christian values. It's a great message. I just want to ask people what that means to them.
So you're handing out tracts and stuff today, are you?
That's it. So a bit of basic Christian literature. More importantly is what I say to people, but if nothing else, it can at least just
Fast eroding at the moment.
massively.
And what do you feel that we need to do as Christians to defend that?
Well, first we need to assess ourselves, make sure we're in good standing, which is hard for all humans. And then we need to get the message out to others.
Some people might feel a little bit concerned by how vocal this is getting, but it's really just street theatre, just rallying the troops together. They're doing this both sides. This is not just a one-sided thing, and getting ready for this march that are about to go on. Nick is heading up the march and leading it forwards, and then behind us by a respectable distance will be those that are standing up for the left. So that banner that you can see there may seem quite inflammatory, and I guess it's designed to be punchy and to the point, but the reality is he's talking about the illegal immigration that's been going on in our nation, and that actually there are many that aren't coming here for legitimate reasons, and so basically it's about mass deporting those that have illegally come to our country that do not have a right to be here or aren't actually claiming true asylum, and to send them back. This next bit of footage I just wanted to play out so that you can see firsthand that although there's street theatre going on here, the left do get very abusive, and sometimes they even get violent. And it was at this particular point of the morning where it did look like it was going to get a little bit out of hand. Now, this might concern some people. What they're watching here might be quite distressing to some people, thinking, what is going on our streets here? But this is what is going on your streets. There is a cultural revolution that's going on. Things have been pushed so far to the left by cultural Marxism that it's now causing revolution on our streets. Now, some people might watch this and think, gosh, they're a bunch of right-wing bigots. But the reality is that these people are not shouting they want their country back because they want to get rid of everyone who's of a different skin color to themselves, because actually people on this march are of different skin colors, different ethnicities, and different religions. That's not the concern here. The concern is mass migration is causing the brakes on this. This has got to stop.
Christ is King. Christ is King. Christ is King.
When was the last time you heard a politician shout "Christ is King" and getting the crowds to chant it back?
Half of the crowd was saying, "Whose streets are streets? Christ is King." If you organise yourself into a split, that would be brilliant. That's going viral. It's amazing. People of Portsmouth, march with us. This is our flag. Those illegal immigrants, those who hate us. Yes, those who we declare this is a Christian land. We are sending home those people that hate us. We are sending home those people who despise us. We are sending home those who torture and rape and murder. Christ is King! 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 We want our country! Has anyone ever bought a pint of lager? Do you know how much of that is tax? With over 50%, depending on where you're buying it. Yeah, you know when you fill up your car with fuel, you know that money that it's been normalised to pay to the government so they can bring in third world savages. And in Fareham, and this can be corroborated locally, there's a block of flats. Guy came up to me earlier saying he's on the family man with a kid. He's on a list to be put into social housing, and illegal invaders at the taxpayer expense are going into that block in Fareham. It is called Operation Scatter. And it's all government backed. The military do nothing. The police do nothing. It is government backed. If you are not running the government, if you have not returned the majority, you are not changing anything. At some point, we were told to not talk about politics and to not religion. That's it. It is your duty. It is your duty to know your politics. It is your duty to know your faith. And it is your duty to pick up your cross and contribute to saving Britain, because we can. Tell people, remember, patriots, never hatred. Never hate. Anger's fine. Get angry. Great motivator. Never, ever hatred. Leave that to the communists. I say the following. Illegals, gone. Islamists, gone. Migrants who are here to subvert our culture, gone. Migrants who hate us, gone. Communists, that's right. Communists as well. What do we want them here? They hate us. Send them home. Send them to North Korea. We have forgotten who we are. It is time to take our country back. It is time to wake up to the realities of what is going to be required. We need bravery. We need strength. What do we have to fear? The wrath of the left? Being called names? So I tell you what I fear. I fear not doing my duty. I fear dying a coward. I fear not standing up for the most vulnerable within society. Duty and action must be our stern master. Our identity is found in our sense of belonging. That belonging is found in our faith. That is what binds us. That is where we find unity. That is what gives us our strength, and that is what builds and holds communities together. We have our sense of belonging. We have our identity. We've just forgotten who we are. Take your country back. Join UKIP. Become part of the resistance. We are out of time. Change starts with us. Take back your country. Fight for independence from the people that despise you.
So I hope you enjoyed this fly on the wall documentary of what it looks like to go to your average protest march on the streets. And it's just showing you what is going on in our nation right now. Around them.
Britain, and I think we should take our country back, ladies and gentlemen. Well done. God bless you.
Now, some people might say, why haven't you filmed much of the left there? Basically because I'd be having to put a little beep on most of the things that they say, because they just throw profanities and swear words by the dozen. Anyway, there's been some other interesting developments going on around the world, as we're hearing in the news about many Christians and other religious minorities being butchered and killed and martyred in Syria right now. And there has been much discussed at the BBC, the British Broadcasting, whatever the C stands for, corporation. Much anger has been said against them. Again, Nick Tanconi and a whole load of people went up to the BBC and protested outside of it, shouting things like, shame on you, BBC, because they will not say what's actually going on. They will not say that it's actually a majority of Christians that are being butchered and martyred for their faith, because, of course, the BBC can't say that, because it goes against the liberal narrative. The liberal narrative is that the Jews and the Christians are the oppressor of the world, and therefore they could never, ever be the victims. And so what the liberal left will do is just turn a complete blind eye to it. We saw this, didn't we, in the October the 7th pogrom, where within days the narrative turned around, didn't it? From Israel being attacked to suddenly, well, allegedly, then it went on to, well, actually, maybe Hamas had to do what they did because Israel was so evil and nasty. And then the whole narrative changed to that Israel are Nazis and Israel are the ones guilty of genocide. Why? And then we also then saw rejoicing on the streets of Britain. The posters that were put up about the hostages were torn down, literally people just tearing them down with anger in their faces. And you think, wow, why would they be so angry? I tell you why they'd be so angry is because, according to left ideology, Islam can do no wrong. And when it did do something that was barbarous, when it did something where it attacked innocent women and children, and raped women and burnt children and beheaded people, when they saw such barbarity, they had to decide, this is not what we stood up for. Israel are supposed to be the ones that the evil ones, and now it shows that Hamas are the evil ones. And so instead of admitting they were wrong and they couldn't do that, they therefore then start the name calling and they turn the narrative around. And when posters were put up throughout the cities of the hostages, they were torn down with vehement anger because they couldn't possibly be reminded of the fact that they are wrong. And some guys from our church, they went out. This was not even at a protest rally. They were just out and they held up this big banner. There was a protest rally going on much further down the road, but they had anything to do with it. And they had this big banner that they held out with the pictures of the hostages. Within minutes, Antifa, that's the militant side of the left, came over and physically manhandled and actually got into an altercation with the people holding that banner, because again, they were so angry and furious because they don't want to see that they are wrong and that they're on the wrong side. Because as far as the liberals are concerned, they are right, they are noble, they are virtuous, and they will do whatever and use whatever means to attack and to destroy and to subjugate and to counsel anything that goes against their narrative. And so this is the sort of thing that's going on in our streets now. Now, because the BBC haven't actually, so I've got a new mouse here, I don't need to use my hand, because the BBC have not gone into any explanation of what's been going on really in Syria, I thought it'd be good to show something that happened back in 2015. This was the persecution of 21 Coptic Christians in Libya by ISIS. The story is about 10 years old now, but it's very powerful. And it's very powerful to see what Christians and how they reacted under persecution. Now, this is elements of real footage, but they've cartoonized it I guess to make it palatable. So this is not offensive. This won't upset the viewers, etc. It's actually quite inspirational watching this story. So it's like a little 10-minute video, and it's called 21, which is about the 21 Coptic Christians that were beheaded for their faith. And I really do think this is important. Again, Christians need to see this, because a lot of Christians out in the Middle East, they think that the Christians in the West are dead, because it's like we have no concern or no interest in their persecution and in their suffering. But we have to bring this right to the front of the lens of the camera, so to speak. And when we've got organizations like BBC and Sky that will simply refuse to report what's going on against Christians, well, then Christians are really none the wiser, because that's actually the majority of people will tune into those stations to get their news from. And so when you're being lied to, or not lied to, but certainly not being told what's going on, that's an omission of truth. It is a gross cover-up of what's going on around the world. So I want to show you this little video now. So I say it's about 10 minutes long, but it's very interesting, and I hope it will bless you.
In 2015, ISIS murdered 21 Christian migrant workers on a beach in Libya. This is the story of the men who died, as told by those who loved them and those who hated them.
الآن محبة الله الآب ونعمة الابن الوحيد ربنا وإلهنا ومخلصنا يسوع المسيح، شركة وموهبة وعطية الروح القدس تكون مع جميعكم. امضوا بسلام، وسلام الله يكون مع جميعكم.
In the early 21st century, ISIS began a reign of terror in attempts to cleanse North Africa of Christians. One of their favorite prey, Egyptian Coptic Christians. In December 2014, ISIS captured 7 Coptic Egyptians as they were making their way home to Egypt. A week later, ISIS raided the housing complex where the Egyptians had been staying. Capturing 13 more Coptic Christians. In all, 20 Coptic Egyptians were gathered together in an underground prison. There was some confusion regarding Matthew from Ghana. He had been captured in a separate raid, and when ISIS tried to let him go, he insisted he was the same as the Egyptians, their God with his God. With Matthew, the group became 21. Everyone were treated well and were given clean food and water. ISIS tried to reason with the Christians. Some of the men were offered money to deny their faith. But it was of no use. The men wouldn't be moved. Thus, the journey of torture began.
هيا تحركوا بسرعة. هيا
The Christians were taken to the beach and forced to pull heavy bags of wet sand.
تحرك.
And when a man fell, he was beaten.
أنكر دينك وسينتهي كل هذا. ما فائدة كل هذه المعاناة؟
يسوع قال ستكونون مبغضين من الجميع من أجل اسمي، ولكن الذي يصبر إلى النهاية فهذا يخلص.
لن يأتي أحد ليخلصك أيها النصراني.
The ground was continually doused with water, so the man couldn't sleep. God was with them. The more they were tortured, the more their faith seemed to grow. One night, the man prayed in one voice, "Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy," over and over. Then suddenly the ground began to shake like an earthquake, and ISIS became afraid. The Christians were forced to wear orange jumpsuits as ISIS filmed them walking along the beach. At times, ISIS saw strange figures walking among the Christians. Some of these figures held swords, others were black, and still others were riding horses. At times, the color of the sky seemed to change as the men were walking along the beach. All of these things brought terror to the hearts of the Islamic State soldiers. They were anxious to kill the Christians before those with the Christians killed them. ISIS filmed the Christians 3 different times. The 3rd time the men were brought to the beach was the last. The men walked looking toward the sky and didn't say a word except their prayers to God.
All praise is due to Allah, the strong and mighty. And may blessings and peace be upon the one sent by the sword as a mercy for all the worlds. O people, recently you've seen us on the hills of Asham and on Dabaq's plain, chopping off the heads that have been carrying the cross delusion for a long time. filled with spite against Islam and Muslims. And today, we're on the south of Rome, on the land of Islam, Libya, sending another message.
يا رب ارحم يا رب ارحم. يسوع اغفر لهم. Neither faith. None did. And they all died with the name of Jesus on their lips. On February 15, 2015, ISIS published a 5-minute video showing the beheading of the Christians. The act was condemned by Muslims and Christians alike.
Beautiful, just beautiful, very harrowing, very disturbing, very moving, but beautiful to see Christianity in the face of such evil, and just to see how God was with them, those signs, those wonders, and just see how that they endured through to the end. And it's difficult to watch things like that, but that's the stuff that's going on in the world right now, and unfortunately not just to Christians but to other minority religious groups as well. And again, as I said, the BBC have chosen not to report on these things because it just goes against their narrative. You know, where the liberals basically say that Christians and Jews are the evil ones and everybody else are just. And even when they do evil things, it's just because of the evil of Christianity and Judaism. It's just not true. So, what is going on in our nation at this moment in time? Well, a little while back, we had the national statistics, the ONS, the Office for National Statistics. They gave us some rather harrowing and shocking figures in that we realized for the first time on record that Christianity had now gone way below, well, not way below, but had now gone below the 50% mark in this nation. That has not been seen before. It then put Britain as, apart from the odd communist country, as the most godless country in the world. In comparison, even with Europe and various other countries, we are the most godless and atheistic country in the world. Now, why? Fortunately, it's now created more than a tipping point. We're now actually sliding. And so what you're seeing in the first video I showed today with what's going on our streets with, you know, the political left and the political center right, is you're starting to see a waking up. The people on the left, they have been indoctrinated really through 30, 40 years or even 50 years into thinking in a certain way. And then those people are on center right most of them tend to be older. They tend to be 40 plus. Well, probably older, 40 plus. And the reason for that is because they still were brought up back during the 70s and the 60s, where there was some semblance of Judeo-Christianity and culture that was still a part of the West here in Britain. And they're seeing it now eroding. And so they're now speaking up about it. And as I've said in this show many times before, there are many people now are waking up and realizing that actually Christianity is what made the Western world what it is. And without that Western culture, we are doomed. And if we're doomed, we know that Islam is waiting in the wings. And you might go, Chris, that's really conspiracy theory. It's not. It's what happened in Iran. It's happened in many places, you know. And I find it funny that the liberal left will accuse Christians and Jews being the colonizers and the evil white men oppressors, but the reality is Islam is also guilty of colonialism, does it all the time. Iran is a really good example. So Iran was made up of many different cultural ethnicities and cultural identities, Mesopotamian, etc. I don't know the full geography, but there was lots of different diverse cultures there. But Islam came in and it basically colonized it so that everyone now speaks Arabic and they only serve one religion, whereas before there were many religions and there was various different subtleties of culture, etc. And so why am I saying these things? Because here in the West, we are trying to make ourselves believe the lie of multiculturalism, that, you know, all cultures are important and at the expense of our own culture. And so this is a book here. It's written by a lady called Melanie Phillips. This book's called The Builder Stone. Highly recommend. If you're not getting what's going on in your country right now, you need to read this book, especially as Christians, because the Christians have now imported so much within our churches. Listen to this, what she says about multiculturalism, because we're always told, aren't we? Multiculturalism, together we're stronger, and all these kind of stuff. It says here, multiculturalism means that no one culture defines the nation, which is composed instead of a babel of cultures and ethnicities with nothing to hold them together. Moreover, multiculturalism holds that the indigenous culture cannot declare its values superior to any other. So it cannot lay down cultural norms that everyone is expected to share. Multiculturalism therefore destroys society as a body of people with a shared collective national vision. As a consequence, the bonds of Western society that have kept everyone together are fraying fast. And worse still, the very fabric of these nations is shrinking. Now, there's some been really interesting statistics that have come out lately, which this lady mentions in this book. Now, the birth rate, as you know, is going down all over the world. Okay, even countries like Africa and even in Islamic countries, it's going down. But there's one country in the whole world where it's going up and bucking the trend. And this is amongst the religious and the secular. It's like, where is this country? What is going on? And this country, if you've got itchy nose, this country is Israel. Okay. And they've looked at the stats and think, well, how is it that Israel, the birth rate is growing up, but whereas here in Britain, for example, we're having 1.6 children now, which is now what we would call below the line, in a sense of we're now in the danger zone that as a culture and as a people group, we can literally die out. Okay. Now, Israel are having 3.6 children per family, or per woman. And it says here, the unique growth in Israel's Jewish fertility rate is attributed to optimism. I ain't got much of that in this country. Patriotism or nationalism. We're not allowed to be patriotic or nationalistic, because if you are, you're a far right thug. Attachment to religious roots. Okay, so again, our Judeo-Christian heritage. Communal solidarity. And the Jewish high regard for raising children, which we don't have, because we don't encourage women to stay at home to look after children. We don't encourage any of that. We would rather women go out to work, because it's all about the economy. It's about giving women what they want. And we don't want women to stay at home. We don't want women to look after children. Now, I'm not being a misogynist pig here. I'm not saying all women should stay at home. I'm not saying that. But we've taken away the choice. That's the problem. And we don't encourage it. We don't give tax breaks for women to bring up their children and stuff. We just don't do it. Okay, so there's this Jewish have high regard for raising children. They have a frontier mentality, i.e., because they are literally in this country in the middle of nowhere, and literally the last bastions of Western civilization, and also a declining number of abortions. In other words, they value life, not death, whereas liberalism values death. You should see what they're trying to pass through in the Death Act, what we call the Suicide Act. They are trying to say any doctors that want to refuse are not allowed to refuse. And they are making it so easy to euthanize people. It's frightening. It's just frightening, because that's liberal. That's liberalism. It's a mentality of death. It's not about life. It's not about optimism, and it's all about the self. And this is so what's key here is that the very things that Israel has is something that the West is losing. So we don't have an optimism. We're not allowed to be patriotic, because if we are, we're considered by our own prime minister a right-wing thug. We don't have an attachment anymore to our Judeo-Christian heritage, because we've been taught that religion is the oppressor of the people, which it isn't. Okay, don't get me wrong, religion has done things bad, but what liberalism is doing is literally destroying identity. We have record high suicide rates, like record high. The biggest killer of young people today is suicide, because we're taking out any sense of meaning. We're taking away everyone's moral compass, where there are no social norms anymore, because it's all about the individual and what I want. And we say that, well, religion is the oppressor. The religion confines people and restricts people. Therefore, we're going to say everyone is free to do as they want. Therefore, morality goes out the window. A sense of purpose and uniqueness go out of the window, because we preach about environmentalism, where man is no longer the created pinnacle of creation. Now man sits under creation, and man can jolly well starve to death as long as creation's okay. So we're living in this world of atheism, where we give individuals, we devoid them of meaning and significance. And this is what the West, liberal West, has done. It's born out of the Enlightenment movement, which happened in the 1800s, which led to the French Revolution, down with religion, up for the freedom of the people. And we saw what happened there. And this is now rife in our politics. It's rife in the very ideology and fabric of Western society. It's destroying it. We now have less Christians in Britain than ever before, and people are now starting to feel it. And this mass migration is causing cultural flux from a Western civilized mindset to an Eastern one, mixed with this liberal cultural ideology. It's really quite horrific. It's really quite scary. That's what actually happening to our country. There's a lot more that I could say on this, but we don't have time for it. But if there's ever a time that the church really needs, I mean, oh man, I mean, I can't say how. I mean, I'm nearly in tears. It breaks my heart. Is that many Christians just will refuse to wake up. They just like, oh no, we can't do this, we can't do that. We must be nice. We must be effeminate. We must be weak. We must be phlegmatic. We must be nice and just roll over and take it. No, in this day, in this hour, we need to be like what Jesus did when he said to the Pharisees, "You brood of vipers, you hypocrites." We need to be when we see the money changers and people taking over God's house and ruining it. It should make us cross that our churches are turning to apostasy and turning them into BLM and environmental factories of the liberal cultural Marxism. It should make us cross. It should make us angry. It should make us want to stand up when we see that half of our nation has now fallen into atheism, and we can see another religion that's waiting in the wings to take this country. It should make Christians want to act. It should make them want to do something. Anyway, we're all out of time, but I'm excited by what God's going to do in this country. But Jesus needs you. Are you going to stand up for him at this hour? Anyway, God bless you all, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye-bye.